Aaron, dear Autogefühl friends, you have asked us to review this car because this one is the Porsche Cayman GTS, the all-new model. There has been a GTS before, but not for this generation. Since 2013, this second generation of the Cayman is available and now in its top version. And we are going to find out today if this one is the most agile and sporty Porsche from serial production. The open-top sister or twin, the Porsche Boxster, was just a standalone car in its first generation. Then with the second generation of the Boxster, there was a first generation of the Cayman. And well, usually you make the coupe cheaper, and they're convertible with a complicated top system. It's more expensive, but in this case it's the other way around. So a very special way Porsche is going there. And meanwhile, the Boxster is in the third generation and the Cayman then in the second generation since 2013. And still, the Cayman is still more expensive. But what do? They make it sportier. So that is kind of the argument that the Cayman is sportier, not only because of the closed roof, but also from the power. The Cayman always has a little bit more power. And then there are of course differences from the normal Cayman and the Cayman GTS. Here also from the exterior, everything is more aggressive and also has this dark look. This one, by the way, is sapphire blue, my absolute favorite color with Porsche. Maybe even with the whole automotive industry. Sapphire blue with Porsche, one of my favorite colors, so great. But then again, with the GTS version, you for example have a black background here with the headlights. And also the lower part is stronger and also all covered in black, as well as the air intakes here in the front. With the GTS you get 19-inch alloys from serial production. And optional, you can also pick the special ceramic brakes. We can see them here. They have a different kind of surface. You immediately see it when you look at it in detail. And then we have yellow brake calipers to it to stress this aggressive look. And you actually only need them when you go on the racetrack because they don't overheat. And that is especially important on the racetrack. You don't really need it in everyday life. At the side profile we can see a hint of how this car is really working, because this one is the air intake for the engine, and that means we got the engine right in the middle of the car, not as in the 911 where we have the engine at the back of the car. We have it right in the middle, and this is a special concept to balance out the weight. So this car has really this 50-50 weight balance, which is especially important for this very agile driving. Then if we continue to the rear of the car, in this case this is really the unique factor of the Porsche Cayman, also in comparison to the 911, the bigger brother, because we don't have the rear engine, but in the middle one we can have a slimmer rear line. The 911 looks really massive at the back, and this one in my opinion is a little bit more harmonic, because we also have a slim line at the end. We have a still very strong side part here, but just from the basic side view it looks slimmer than a 911 and in my opinion even more beautiful. At the rear end of the car just design-wise, you can see it's not kind of this Jaguar philosophy where you use as less lines as possible. It's more like a sculpture. We have, you know, a gap here from the wing. Then we have this 3D effect at the rear headlights. And so it's not a very calm design, but more the sculptural design. But I think it's very dramatic and also extremely sporty. And I'm very convinced of this design, again, also in comparison to the 911. Especially for the GTS, we also have a dark background here with the rear lights. We have the GTS logo, and we have two pipes centrally here, also in black, and with a massive black rear diffuser. So I want to hear from you now. How do you like the design of the Porsche Cayman GTS, and also how do you like it in comparison to the 911? In my opinion, I like the Cayman more because it has this slimmer rear end and, well, has this more harmonic appeal in my opinion. But what do you think? So let's get inside. You've seen here at the handle, it slides a little bit upwards, and I like it very much, especially this small feature. So here in the Porsche Cayman GTS we have the special super sport seats, and on the first hand they look very uncomfortable, and you firstly wonder, you cannot really adjust the back part. It's not possible. You can just pull this string here and then you can just flip it if you maybe want to put something behind it. I'm not sure. I wouldn't use it in everyday life, but at least it's possible here. But when sitting there, it's not possible to adjust the back part. The only thing you can adjust there is to slide to the front and the back again. Nothing more. Then at the inside we got this Alcantara surface. That's very good because, especially when you're on the racetrack, you don't slide on it to the right and the left. And it's also good for the climate function because in the summer it doesn't get that warm, in the winter it doesn't get that cold. Let's get in now. It's not too easy to get in the car, especially when you're tall, and you have to watch out because the side support is also pretty strong, that you don't put your legs on here. You maybe hurt yourself even when getting into the car. Then again, when you're sitting, they are, well, surprisingly comfortable actually, I must say, because they really hold you tight, and that's not only good for the racetrack but also for everyday driving, because your back also has support then. And especially the shoulder support is very good here. Some racing cars lack that actually, but they really thought about how it should behave on the racetrack. And then again, when you're sitting inside, you feel okay. The backrest is actually really good. Also when it's that steep, because you're actually also, when you're city driving, not supposed to lay back like in the sofa. Then a very nice detail, you see the belt here. It has some great color on the outside, and you know my favorite are contrast colors everywhere on the belt, and also the famous contrast stitches we have here as well, for example in white on the dashboard. And then as soon as you're getting in here, you see this is pure racing. Just the front look you have. You see the strong hood here at the left side. You have the Alcantara steering wheel, the round instruments, this beautiful shifting lever, aluminum on the top, Alcantara around here, and also the lower back of it. And hear the sound. I'm showing you that later on when we're driving. Also, in my opinion, a special sound design for the shifting. You really hear it very clearly. That also states that this is a pure racing car. So the interior is, well, it's not that exciting when you see all the luxury features, something. It's not about luxury, it's really about racing. For example, we see it here also with this carbon fiber structure here. Then you can look at the contrast stitches we also have on the Alcantara. So I'm really a fan of Alcantara, and therefore I also like this interior. It's not too much, so you shouldn't get too distracted from your view on the road. The one special thing about the interior is the analog clock, and it's also a timer, for example also for the racetrack. This one is included in the Sport Chrono package with a serial here also in the Cayman GTS. You have actually two options. You can have it digitally here in the central instruments, and also it's displaying here, right here in this very beautiful clock. I'm showing you the options right here now. For example, now we're looking at the GPS screen. Then we can switch, for example, have the mobile phone on, the radio, with some information about fluids. Then this is a G meter, it shows us the G-force we are actually getting. This one is the assistant for shifting. When we have the manual transmission, it shows me when I should actually shift. And then we have the clock here. And then I can start it, for example. And then something very nice is happening actually with the analog clock in the middle. Look at that. Doesn't show the actual time anymore, but has this stopwatch. Then, for example, we can go on the racetrack and have a lap. And then on the digital instruments we see how fast the lap was. Controls are the most important for the Cayman GTS. Let me explain that to you. First of all, we start here with the Sport button. Then you see two other buttons are automatically activated. This one is for the Sport exhaust. It boosts the sound. It's really massive then. And this one is to turn on the automatic start-stop function. In general, Sport mode means you got a better response from the throttle, also from the steering wheel, and for example the stability program is also not regulating that much. Then in Sport Plus, this is even a step further, so the regulation of the stability management is even drawn back more. So you have, for example, more control over the car on the racetrack, more manual control, less electronic control. And then again, if you want to spin around the wheels extremely, we can also deactivate the stability management completely. I would not recommend it for normal street driving, of course, because in the Sport Plus mode you can already drive very sporty, and also a little bit of wheel spin is allowed with that one. This one is just, well, when you want to really play around with the car, and we are also trying to do that right now. Whew, wow, this is just amazing, I can tell you, it's just incredible. It's hardly possible with any other car, in my opinion, even on rather dry conditions. This is just crazy. It was just possible when I put the stability management completely off. Otherwise, I would just have been able to flip it a little bit around. And also when we did our other shots, we always had that in because it's too dangerous when you get higher speeds. So I would only recommend it also to turn it off at lower speeds when you really want to play around with and have some space to do it. But then, just so much fun. And finally, this one is to turn out the wing, the rear wing, very small one. And when we hold it again, then we can close it. Usually it works automatically. You don't really need that button because when you're driving faster than 120 kilometers, it flips out, and then when you're going slower than 80 kilometers again, it flips down again. So I'm not sure why you're using it manually. Maybe if you think it looks cool. So to open the trunk in the front and the back, we have this beautiful Porsche key here. It symbolizes a small car. Very beautiful in my opinion. But this one actually, the attachment, it tends to rip off. So that's a little bit cheaply done here. But here in this case at the Cayman, we have two buttons. First one here, to open the back trunk. Hydraulic dampers, of course. We just have a small space here. Well, suitcase doesn't really fit. Maybe like some shopping bags, a backpack. This one is fitting for that one. You can also attach nets here to secure your luggage, but I wouldn't put too much on here, of course. This one, by the way, it looks a little bit like there would be a subwoofer or something like that, but it's not the case. It's actually a very nice cover for the fluids, here for the coolant, and on the other side for the motor oil. So this is also the place where you can check the oil. So that's for the back. It's also quite easy to close it. That's it. And then we continue to the front, because this is a classic Porsche style. We have the most space in the front. There's also the keyless package available, so we could have keyless entry to the normal doors, and also for the trunk in the rear and the front there would be the option that we just wave the hand here and then it flips up. We don't have it in this case, although it's the top GTS version. So we have to put the key, then we can open the front hood. And there you see, it's actually more space than you would expect. It's especially very steep, so you can also put small suitcases horizontally in it. So that should be enough also when you, for example, want to buy some beverages in the box, or for example. Behind this one, by the way, this is here for the wiper fluid, and behind this one is a small compressor if you have something with the tires and you need to repair them. And again, close in two processes. That's it. About the engine, we get a 6-cylinder 3.4 liter flat twin engine in here. This flat twin engine also typical for Porsche, and they're very special, I must admit, very good engines. In this case, with the Porsche Cayman GTS, we even have a little bit more horsepower than in the predecessor version. We now have 340 horsepower, giving us a maximum of torque from 380 Newton meters. And then the last figure for today, for the 0 to 100 sprint, we will be below 5 seconds. It all depends on if you have the dual clutch transmission or if you do it manually, but you have 4-point-something seconds already, and you know, it's never exactly the same. So now we're going to have a lot of fun with this Porsche Cayman GTS, and we'll also test the acceleration. I would say if shifting is any fun in any car, this one is. Here in the Sport Plus mode, when I shift down, listen to this. You know, this gas in between. This is the typical old racing style. Usually you would do it manually, but in this case with the Sport Plus mode, it's been done automatically. Listen again. So beautiful. The Porsche Cayman GTS is all about precision, and so you feel it in every turn. Of course you expect it from a Porsche, but just to mention it, every command you give in the steering wheel is directly transported on the road. That also makes fun in every corner you turn, no matter on the racetrack or in the city. We have the manual transmission here, and I found it very pleasing about the sound of the manual transmission when shifting, just from the lever. I think they have that done intentionally. Just listen to this. At the moment it switches into neutral. I think they could have done it silently, but it was done intentionally, that you have this clicking sound. It reminds me a little bit of old sports cars, maybe even of a Formula 1 car when you used to do manual shifts, or you hear the sound is put over in movies, for example. I think that is a very nice feature here. There's also the dual clutch transmission available, the PDK, Porsche Doppelkupplungsgetriebe, it's a German word. It's a 3,500 euros extra here in Germany, so a lot of extra actually for that option. But of course, especially for this very sporty car, some people argue they really want a manual transmission intentionally, and of course with this great sound, and it's also working flawlessly, you also don't have a problem with it. Then again, when riding in the city here now, stop and go, you maybe heard the start and stop function. That works pretty well. And then, because it's also just a nice manual transmission, and the clutch is also not that hard to control. Some sports cars, you really have to watch out with the clutch, and then with the gas and aisle you push the throttle fully and hop forward, or you maybe have problems to get forward at all. But here it's also quite easy to control in the city, even when you're not used to a very powerful sports car. Then the steering wheel, I love it when it's covered in Alcantara. You have better grip when you want to go racing, and still you have a soft surface just for everyday riding, and you don't sweat on it so much. In this case we have the sports steering wheel where we don't have any knobs or buttons. This is also intentionally, of course, because when racing nothing should disturb you, even at the steering wheel. And actually you don't also miss it in everyday riding, because you can control everything with the touchscreen. It's quite close here to the steering wheel as well, and the stoke columns behind the steering wheel, for example for the cruise control and turning indicators. By the way, when pulling the turning indicator, that's sometimes a little bit weird because it's very hard to turn it. I think it's the only column in Porsche at all that feels a little bit weird. It's in every Porsche. I don't know why they haven't changed it to make it more premium feeling. Also the steering wheel is a little bit annoying when you want to watch at the GPS, because when I have my hand here, I can only see half of the screen, so that annoys your view a little bit. So, but in general, we have this very nice sporty cockpit with the 3 round instruments. Of course the screen isn't round, but it's covered with this round structure there. And that is, of course, you always look at it and say, wow, I'm in a very great sports car. We've also got the GTS logo there. And everything about the rest is also very clean. So, what do you feel when riding in the city? Of course, it's not that comfortable from the suspension. I've told about that. But in general, you feel quite cozy in this small sports car. Of course, limited visibility in the front, but you always got that power. If someone annoys you, you could show him who's the king of the road. So we're on the motorway now. You see we're riding 6th gear, 100 kilometers an hour, about 2,500 revs. Now we're going a little bit uphill, and this flat twin engine is really so amazing. Even when we're in the 6th gear now, and I want to accelerate, for example, 100 kilometers to 120, when I'm just pressing the throttle. 6th gear and uphill. And that's it. So even if you don't like to shift a lot, it doesn't really matter. The car accelerates in any gear and in any condition. I really like the engine because it has no turbo, and so you really get the power also from the low revs. That's very nice. One of that moments where you can really hear the sound with a special button is, for example, here in the tunnel. Awesome, isn't it? Of course, you will also be driving the Porsche Cayman GTS inside the city, because you don't have time to be always on the racetrack. And I must say, well, from the suspension, it is really not suitable for the city, because it's so rough, and all the small bumps you have here in the city, they're just carried through to your back and to your legs as well. Sometimes, for example, when you're going on some small rocks, your legs are shaking, and it actually can really hurt. So I would not recommend it for your everyday riding. If you more search a car not to go out on the racetrack, really just for the everyday driving and enjoying the Porsche experience, then I would rather go for the base model of the Cayman, I must admit. However, for the sporty equipment we have here, for example the super sport seats, they are not that uncomfortable as they look. So we first wondered, why can't you really change the back of the seat? But actually it's okay. No, it's very steep, very sporty of course, but I'm okay with this steep setup, because I'm usually sitting almost that way. Actually you are supposed to sit that way. A lot of people sit in the car like on the sofa, and that's not good security-wise. For example, if someone is hitting you at the back, then your head is maybe shake them around or something like that. That's also not that good. And also, you have to have a very good control on the steering wheel, and if you press the brakes very hard, you also need support in the back. So it's actually good as well to have it exactly in this setup, and so I'm also fine with it. And the sporty setup of the seat in general, it keeps you very tight, and so you also don't get back pain that fast, because something is holding you. That's also quite comfortable for everyday riding. But however, as I said in the beginning, the suspension really annoys you when you're not on the racetrack. Let's get to the conclusion. First of all, my personal opinion is this is the most beautiful Porsche, exactly in this color as well, there is on the market right now. But what do you think about exactly that opinion? And then to the general conclusion, I must really say it is the most sporty Porsche there is from serial production right now. Of course, the 911 in its several different versions has more power than on the racetrack. If you compare, for example, a Cayman GTS and the 911 GTS, the 911 GTS will always be faster because it just has this more power. However, if you compare a GTS from the Cayman and the normal 911, because I mean the 911 even in the basis version is pretty much more expensive even still than the Cayman GTS top version, and has comparable power then I think the GTS would also win on the racetrack. So basically you get top version, the top sports version, for a cheaper price than the 911, and you really got this most agile car. I'm not sure if there's any other car on the market right now. Maybe the Jaguar F-Type in its R version. This was also a lot of fun. This one I think is better to control because the weight balance is even a little bit better because of the central engine. I think you can get better lap times with that one. On the other hand, the F-Type is maybe a little bit uncontrollable and gives you a little bit more emotion. But in general, there's hardly any other car that can give you more emotion than this one. You've seen it just when the road is a little bit wet and maybe some leaves on it, you can turn it just in a circle on standstill. This is really incredible. Usually we just do it on a winter test drive on the ice, so there's really a lot of power. I especially love this flat twin engine because it does not have this turbo, so you don't consume so much. Actually, when you just go on the motorway, you can also just have 8 liters per 100 kilometers, and when you want to have fun, it goes up to 10 liters then. That's really okay for such an engine, and also the sound is just awesome. So I would say, if you really want the most sporty car, one of the most sporty cars on the market, then you really ride with that one. If you're not using the Porsche Cayman on the racetrack, then in my opinion you should not go for the GTS. You just pick the basic version because, you know, the suspension is very good for the racetrack, but also very rough in everyday driving. So if you like to go on racetracks and have the possibility to do it, go for the GTS. Otherwise, just go for the base model. And now I want to hear your opinions again on that car and also on our review. I thank you very much for watching it, and we see you at the next Autogefühl episode.